All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to yet another episode of the Facts Over Feelings podcast. I'm back here joined once again by my co-host Trevor Kaufman,
Flight
and
number WN1750 to Cancun is now departing. Mr. James, here's your first class ticket. MVP, fake MVP, Nikola Jokic, here's your ticket. Patrick Beverly, you're sitting in the cargo hold. Have a nice flight, everybody. Oh, Ryan, hi. We have a podcast today. I forgot. Sorry. Today I was at Sky Harbor, working the Cancun flight where all the NBA athletes are going. They
look,
happen to all be guys that lost to the Suns. But
look,
continue on,
this
please.
is this is good. I'm glad we started the podcast off on a note like this because, folks, let me tell you right here, if you're watching, this is what every Suns fan is acting like right now. They're all acting like they've won the NBA Finals. It's almost like they've already won the title. I'm looking here, I'm seeing all these fans celebrating, acting all hype. It's like, man, you haven't done anything yet. You haven't won the championship. No one cares if you go to the finals and lose. No one will remember you. You weren't special. All that matters is you sealed the deal. When the Cleveland Cavaliers lost in 2017 to Kevin Durant and the Snake and the Golden State Warriors, no one remembered that the Cleveland Cavaliers 2017 team was better than the 2016 team. No one remembered that because the Golden State Warriors were the best team to ever grace the NBA court. They're the best team to ever play. They won it all. It doesn't
You,
matter
you,
if the
you
Suns
couldn't you
make
couldn't you couldn't think of an example that was that didn't have to relate to one of your teams, right? That's
Look,
okay though.
only point is the Suns need to finish it off these next few weeks in the NBA Finals, and they're going to be facing the Milwaukee Bucks, and it'll be an interesting series. It'll be an interesting NBA Finals. I know a lot of people who aren't Suns and Milwaukee and Bucks fans are like, "Oh, no one's going to watch the finals because it's two small market teams. They're boring. It's going to be boring. No one's going to watch." I don't know if I agree with that, but I think regardless of the viewership, it'll be a very entertaining finals, I think. And Trevor, before we talked about the actual NBA Finals matchup, which gets started tomorrow night, I wanted to talk about these two series, these conference championship series that just occurred. And, we can start off by talking about your team. We can start off by talking about the Phoenix Suns and their victory over the LA Clippers in 6 games, which I might add, it took me 3 series, but I finally correctly predicted a Phoenix Suns playoff series. So I got to
Well done, well done.
give myself a little respect for that. It took me a while, but I finally got on the Suns bandwagon. But Trevor, what are your thoughts on the series? Did it go as you expected? Anything you want to point out, highlight?
No, the series did not really go as I expected. In terms of the final result, yes.
Mm.
Before the series started, actually before the playoffs started, I had this exact Western Conference Finals matchup slated, but I did say the Suns would win in 7, not 6.
Mm.
But no, other than that, the series was very odd. I thought it was a very entertaining series. Game 1 was all about the legendary performance of Devin Booker.
Mm.
Game 2, the infamous Valley Oop and the horrendous officiating of Scott Foster, who happens to be one of the officials listed for the NBA Finals this year. Let's hope he doesn't have to officiate one of our games. And then games 3 and 4 looked like 80s basketball. It was very ugly, very physical, not a lot of offense, a lot of poor shooting, a lot of defense.
Yeah.
But we were able to grind out a split in LA, and we're up 3-1. We're coming home game 5. It's a coronation. Chris Paul's going to the finals. The Suns have done it. The Clippers are finally defeated. And then Paul George, Reggie Jackson, and Marcus Morris put together a masterpiece. They kick our asses in game 5. And how are the Suns going to respond? Because now the whispers start to creep up again before game 6. Chris Paul's blown a 3-1 lead before. He blew it with the Clippers. Chris Paul's blown several 2-0 leads. He's blown several 3-2 leads. And as much as I love Chris Paul, I have to admit his playoff resume is not nearly as decorated, you would think, as his regular season resume, right? He's had a lot of blunders in the playoffs. And I think that's just, that's the non-biased, objective analyst in me saying that. And I love Chris Paul. He has done wonders for my franchise, but he has had a lot of mishaps in the playoffs. In game 6, we came out strong. I think we were up by 17 early in the third quarter. And then the Clippers go on a 10-0 run in 2 minutes. It's a 7-point game. I'm watching the game with a couple friends, and I'm like, hey, man, are we really going to blow this? The Suns of the past, man, the Suns of the past would find a way to lose games like this. And then Chris Paul said, enough is enough. And he put together the greatest quarter of basketball in Phoenix Suns playoff history. 27 points in the final 13:30 of the game. He hit 5 threes in that span. He was 7 of 8 on the night. He had 41 points on the night, 8 assists, 0 turnovers, and he quite literally broke the Los Angeles Clippers. And in bold, Patrick Beverley. He broke Patrick Beverley, which, Patrick Beverley's so overrated by the national media. He's a great defender. The guy's just a flying gnat that gets away with foul after foul. He literally brings nothing to a team except all talk and no bite. I'm so glad Patrick Beverley broke and just completely turned into a big baby, threw a tantrum, shoved my guy in the back. If I was courtside, I would have ran over and started swinging at him, but I wasn't. And I'm glad none of my son's players did, because they probably would have gotten suspended, and it was very smart of them to not react, because that's what Beverley wants. He wants a reaction. Anyways, back to the real story at hand here. Chris Paul was quite legendary. He finally has his finals breakthrough. I also want to highlight DeAndre Ayton. I'm so proud of his growth. I think he has been an unbelievable, consistent force in the playoffs for us. I want to give Torrey Craig some props. I thought he was huge in Game 6, especially since Mikal was really struggling. Jay Crowder has been great for us all season. I don't know. It's just been a fantastic ride with this Suns team, and I'm so proud of the way Chris Paul closed that series out and took over that basketball game, and now he's got to do it. We got to do it one more time against a really good Milwaukee Bucks team.
Yeah, I mean, look, I said the Phoenix Suns would win this series in 6, and that's exactly what happened. The Clippers.
But Nixon 6, right, Ryan?
Look,
I love teasing Ryan when he gets stuff wrong. It happens so not often. I get to relish. I get to relish in the fact that my Suns are succeeding and Ryan hates it. But go ahead.
Here's the thing. The Phoenix Suns. I said it last series before the series started. They're a team that you can't really bet against right now. And from an objective standpoint, I mean, this team has been playing really good team basketball. Now, I mean, they got back to it in Game 6. That's why they won. They also won because Chris Paul was just absolutely terrific in the second half. But, I mean, make no mistake, I think even if he didn't go off like that, I think they still were going to win the game. I mean, they were leading pretty much from wire to wire. I mean, like DeMarcus Cousins had a ridiculous spank-in 3 at the end of the quarter.
I remember
that was ridiculous. But like, the Clippers weren't hitting shots. I mean, I was watching that game, especially the first half, very closely, and the Clippers shot. I mean, they shot 30% from 3. Like, they rely so heavily on the 3-point shot that if they're not hitting those at least like a 37-38% clip, I mean, they weren't going to win that game, and they didn't win that game. So I mean, they were kind of down from the start. They were at a disadvantage because they weren't hitting their shots. Paul George was 1 for 6 from 3. Like, it's just not. Reggie Jackson had probably his worst game of the series. Trevor, 4 for 12 from the field, right? 2 for 7 from 3. They just struggled hitting shots. And momentum's a big thing. I think it's a bigger thing in college than it is in the pros, but it was a massive thing in this game. I mean, when Chris Paul just got rolling and the Suns got rolling, there was no slowing that ball down. Like, it was just rolling down a hill, gaining steam, and the Clippers weren't able to stop it. And that's just kind of, how the series ended. I mean, I think that the Suns, are just playing too good of basketball right now. And I think that they got away from it in Game 5, Trevor. I think they got away from it in Game 5 when they lost that game. I remember saying that I thought that they got away from they did a lot of ISO ball. I know you mentioned that in past podcasts as well. Particularly Devin Booker was doing a lot of ISO ball in Game 5 and in previous games and was struggling. Chris Paul was doing it as well. But I think that the more they go away from that, the more they get back to giving to the players off the bench, because the Suns have a fantastic bench. They have fantastic depth. I also want to say, I think Torrey Craig has played really well in his minutes. I don't know what you think.
Cash considerations, Craig.
Especially in this series. Like, seriously, he's played really well. And I'm looking at this Game 6, Trevor, and I mean, you guys won by 27. Torrey Craig was a plus 28. When he was on the floor in 30 minutes. He played 30 minutes off the bench. Mikal Bridges only played 23 minutes. I mean, Mikal Bridges didn't really play. I mean, Craig was just the better player. In maybe not the whole series, but at least in these last few games, and especially in Game 6. I mean, he was definitely the better player. So I just really like this sort of mentality of the next player can step up when one's struggling. Cam Johnson was terrific in this entire series. He shot the ball really, really well. I think, Trevor, we talked about it in Game 5. He was the only guy who really shot the ball well for the Phoenix Suns. He wasn't able to play in Game 6, but throughout the whole series he played really, really well. And I don't really have anything else to say about it. I mean, again, I didn't think that the Clippers had enough in the gas without Kawhi. I think it would have been a whole different series with Kawhi. But I just think that having to rely on Marcus Morris and Reggie Jackson and Terrence Mann is going to catch up to you eventually. Like, these guys played so well for the majority of this postseason, but to not have a second near star, even, like, obviously Kawhi's a superstar, but you could have a guy who's like a Middleton type, but they didn't even have that. They don't even have a guy of that level to go with Paul George, and he just can't handle it. He just couldn't handle it. And I'm not knocking him at all towards the end of the series, because like it makes total sense. It's so difficult to will your team to win a series, to win 2 games in a row, that you'd have to win 3 games in a row, really, if you're including Game 5 against this quality of a Phoenix Suns team when you just have no other stars to help you. It was just too difficult. I mean, they gave it their all, but the Suns they're too well-rounded of a team. They're playing too well right now, and Chris Paul just had one of the best performances I've ever seen.
Wow, that was a solid analysis there, Ryan. Well done, my friend.
That was a lot. I know.
I do want to talk about the Clippers for a little bit, because the Clippers are going to have a really interesting offseason. I want to talk about Reggie Jackson in particular. I thought Reggie Jackson was fantastic for them. And he's one of the few Clippers players that at the end of the day, I would have shook his hand. Patrick Beverley can screw himself. Marcus Morris wouldn't shake his hand either. Terrence Mann, he's okay. Marcus Morris left the Suns in a very unprofessional way, as did many other players. So maybe that's a fault of our organization. Anyways, Reggie Jackson had a fantastic playoffs. He was consistent. He was huge for them, especially when Kawhi went down. And it's going to be really interesting to see what they do with him, because in today's day and age, you can't pay everybody. But if the Clippers are able to find a way to keep Morris, Paul George, Reggie Jackson, and Kawhi Leonard, I'm going to come out and say it. I think that team is the favorites to win the West next year. Yep. I just think the way that Morris and Reggie Jackson played throughout this postseason, and particularly Reggie Jackson, as a Clippers fan, you got to love what you saw. And I've said it before, the scheduling kind of screwed the Clippers. They had I think they played like 20-something playoff games in 39 days or 40 days. I mean, they literally had no rest for 6 weeks straight, and they're playing the most intense basketball of the season, day in and day out. Yep. So in that sense, I do think they got a little bit screwed. But regardless, they were a very tough opponent. Reggie Jackson was fantastic. Paul George was fantastic this postseason. I get his shooting numbers weren't, as efficient as you might think, but let's break this down for a second. Nobody is going to shoot the ball as well as they do in the playoffs, as well as they did in the regular season, right? The defense is, knocked up a notch. There's a lot more ISO ball, particularly at the end of games. Guys are taking a lot tougher shots in the postseason. They're playing more minutes. They're tired. Rotations are thinned out, and they see more double teams, especially if they get hot. I just think the playoffs is a different animal, and you're destined to shoot the ball a little bit worse, right? You're going to have a hot game where you shoot 60, 70%. That just shows how great these guys are. But you're going to have those games. I mean, my Suns did it. Chris Paul and Devin Booker laid 3 eggs in a row from the field. I think they were sub 40% in 2 or 3 games in a row from the field. Hell, in game 3, they shot a combined 25%. That just happens, You're playing a lot of games and not a lot of nights off. Defense is turned up, ISO ball, it all accumulates to lower shooting. So I don't want to hear people talk about Paul George's, 6 for 19 game or 5 for 21 game. That those games are going to happen in the playoffs, right? And I thought he was fantastic. He played the most minutes of anybody in the postseason by a lot, and he did everything he could. And if I'm Kawhi Leonard and I'm thinking about where I can win a title, I can either stay with the Los Angeles Clippers, or I'll talk about a trade scenario a little bit later on the podcast that could send Kawhi Leonard to a super team and he can win a ring that way. But I think if I'm Kawhi Leonard, I love what I saw from the Clippers this postseason.
Yeah, and I'll wrap this up in a minute, but I do want to talk about Kawhi briefly because I agree with you. Like what he's seen from this Clippers team has to be encouraging. Now, look, Kawhi, sometimes I don't know what goes on in his head. He seems hard to please. Like, if you're looking from an objective basketball standpoint, him staying in Toronto would have been just fine.
Right.
That team had a great supporting cast, great leadership, everything, and he bolts for LA. Like, great. Like, I don't know. So, like, I think that, not everything's strictly basketball with him. Obviously, I guess he wanted to go to LA, even though he's a really quiet guy. It just seems kind of weird. Like, he doesn't want to be in the limelight, but he goes to a city where he's always going to be in the limelight. And, this is going off the rails a little bit, but talking about Kawhi briefly going into this offseason, I was listening to Colin Cowherd talk the other day, and I know Trevor's a big Colin Cowherd fan, loves a lot of his takes.
I am a big fan.
And, I like a lot of his takes too. Not all of them, but I like a lot of them. And what he was saying is, look, Kawhi isn't a guy that wants to be in the limelight. He doesn't want the spotlight directly shown on him. And that's what's happening when he's on the Clippers. Paul George is not better than Kawhi. We all know that.
Right.
Paul George doesn't, he's not he's not the most animated guy. He's not the guy that he doesn't necessarily love to talk. Right? I mean, he gets destroyed on social media all the time. So I don't think he's the biggest fan of just like going out there and being very communicative with the media. So Kawhi has to take a lot of that limelight and take a lot of that spotlight because of that, and because he's the best player on the team. Cowherd was saying, look, Kawhi might want to go somewhere where he's no longer in the limelight, no longer number one guy that the media pays attention to on the team. And, I think that's definitely a possibility. I'll get into that when Trevor talks about his trade scenario a little bit later. But I think that that's just going to be an interesting dynamic going into the offseason, seeing what Kawhi does. Because this Clippers team was fantastic, Trevor. You're definitely right. And I do wonder, though, going into next year, can Reggie Jackson sustain that level of play? I just don't think so. I mean, this guy's going to get a payday. He'll end up being a little bit overpaid. I think he can still be a really solid guard for a playoff team. I don't think he'll be that good. I mean, that was a ridiculous level of consistency from Reggie Jackson. We haven't seen that for many years, if ever, at any point in his career. But I mean, I got to give him mad respect because he's going to get a lot of money. He's going to get Dennis Schroeder money. The money Schroeder wanted, probably $15+ million a year. And if they can keep the whole team together, I agree with you. They'll be one of the best in the NBA, especially the Western Conference. But yeah, I don't have much else to say other than the Suns were too hot. They were too healthy, other than Chris Paul missing the 2 games, which I do want to say Suns didn't miss a beat when he missed those 2 games. So just got to give more credit to the Suns because they've just overcome every obstacle they faced so far, no matter if it's injuries or, quality of opponent, whatever it is. They've just done a fantastic job. So I don't really have much else to add on that, in this whole series. I don't know if, Trevor, you have anything else specific to add about this series, but
no, I got a lot more to say about this finals matchup.
Yes.
And all that, but
Same.
We can talk about the East for a second, Ryan. The least, as I like to call it.
Okay.
The Milwaukee Bucks did what I thought they would do. They'd won this series fairly handily. It took 6 games. I thought it would be in 5, but regardless, Ryan, what are your thoughts on this Eastern Conference Finals? And overall, the season that the Hawks had, Nate McMillan just agreed to a contract extension with the Hawks today. Well-deserved, as you and I would both agree. But yeah, I just want to, give me some of your overall thoughts on this series.
Yeah, so just talking about McMillan for a second, just got to give hats off to him for getting that extension, getting cemented as the Hawks head coach because, we both said it multiple times, he deserves it 100%. So I'm glad that they agree with that. The GM and the ownership agree with us because, he definitely does deserve to stay and get a long-term contract. But talking about this series specifically, it's too bad, Trevor, because it's yet another series marred by injury. It was really tough. The 2 best players go down, right? I mean, these are 2 all-star caliber players who go down. The best players on their respective teams, they missed the last 3 games of the series. And it was just tough. I mean, it was still good basketball at times, but, you'd rather watch a fully healthy team. You'd rather watch superstars play, at least from an NBA standpoint. From a fan standpoint, I think you'd rather watch Giannis and Trae go at it than Danilo Gallinari and Drew Holiday. But that's just me. So that's too bad. But there are some good things that came out of it. There are some players that stepped up that I got to give hats off to. There are a few players on Milwaukee that I wanted to mention. Obviously we've talked about PJ Tucker and what he's done for this team, but I do want to talk about Chris Middleton and the fact that he stepped up big time in these final 2 games, Trevor. I mean, I look at his numbers in these final 2 games, and he was 10 for 22 in Game 6, 32 points, 7 assists. He did a great job distributing the ball, something that he kind of had to do with Giannis not there. And he was 10 for 20 in Game 5 with 26 points, 8 assists, 13 boards. He stepped up, played an all-around game, shot efficiently from the floor. Trevor, I've been a kind of a Chris Middleton critic. He's kind of been inconsistent at times, especially in the Brooklyn series. He had some off games, and in past playoff series, he hasn't really stepped up when it mattered. But he stepped up in this series, and I got to give him credit because he played well. I got to respect that. But I also, wanted to talk about, there are two guys I wanted to talk about. First, I'll talk about Bobby Portis because I don't think a lot of people are going to talk about him. But this guy's getting hard minutes, big minutes in the playoffs now, Trevor. He got 35 minutes in Game 5, 33 minutes, 32 minutes in Game 6. And while he doesn't score that many points, he had 22 in Game 5 and 12 in Game 6. He just adds to this Bucks grittiness that I love to see. And him on top of PJ Tucker, how gritty and, defensive-minded and how much of a leader PJ Tucker is, Bobby Portis just is adding to that. I think he's a very, nose to the grindstone, put your head down and play your hardest on the floor on both ends. I think that's kind of Bobby Portis. And I'd love to see the fans especially embrace him. I think I might have mentioned this to Trevor off the air. I'm not sure, but he kind of reminds me, the fans embracing him and chanting, his name during games reminds me of the Cavaliers in 2015, kind of falling in love with Matthew Dellavedova, kind of a scrappy guy who really, wasn't all that before these playoffs. Like, let's face it, Bobby Portis wasn't really much in the NBA prior to these playoffs. He was a guy who was decent. He's a decent backup, power forward, maybe center, undersized center. He was okay. He wasn't really known for anything specific. He was fine. But in these playoffs, especially the series, he's just kind of been embraced by the fans. And he's, gotten, a lot of love from the fans and just kind of helped propel this team, to have them play better basketball, elevate their team. And I just really like a lot of the leadership and the fight and the grittiness that this team displays. And I think that there's a lot of guys on this team that have that. And the last guy I wanted to call out was Pat Connaughton, because he has been really nice in the playoffs in general off the bench for this team. And especially in this series as well. He only plays 20 to 30 minutes a game, Trevor. And he doesn't light up the box score. He doesn't fill up the box score, right? He doesn't pour in a ton of points. He doesn't, always shoot super efficiently from the field. But he adds to this, and I keep saying it, and I'm sorry, it's not really an applicable thing. But this team is it's just a very a gritty team that never gives up, and he just makes those big effort plays that I really like. He'll tip the ball on an offensive board, tip it back out to Middleton or Drew Holiday. Get them that extra possession. He'll dive for the ball. He'll stay with his defensive assignment on defense. He's a great defender. Pat Connaughton is. He's a very solid defender, a pesky player. I really like all these guys that they have off their bench and in their starting lineup on the Bucks. And I think that the fact that they're stepping up now is a great sign because, Trevor, in past years, we've seen the Bucks struggle in the playoffs. I've documented a lot. I know you've acknowledged it as well. And while you've been higher on the Bucks than I have, I don't think we thought going in that they were going to make the NBA Finals. I don't personally think so, and I think a lot of that has to do with their leadership and the fight that this team has displayed. And I think that they have a lot of guys now who are stepping up now, role players who are stepping up and giving them that little extra step, that little extra juice, that little extra energy. And I think it's a great thing that I've seen. So I just wanted to point that out. And I'll say one more thing, but I wanted to toss it over to you because I just talked for a long time about the players. So what did you think?
I agree with a lot of your points. I'm glad you highlighted those role players because those role players did change the series. I was going to mention Bobby Portis because I thought he was a huge X factor in this series. His energy, his toughness, as you said, his hustle was huge. It uplifted the Bucks roster. It gave the crowd energy in Game 5. It brought out the best in Middleton and Holiday. I totally agree with you on that point. I want to highlight Drew Holiday, though. I think Drew Holiday's performances in the back half of the series were the reason why the Bucks won. And it was interesting in Game 5, after the Bucks won Game 5, Charles Barkley asked a really interesting interview question. He goes, Drew, man, like you were so aggressive tonight, like you were locked in. Like, why aren't you like this every time? Like, why aren't you like this day in and day out? And Drew Holiday answers honestly. He goes, yeah, I don't know. People all the time tell me, man, like I need to be more aggressive, more consistently. It was a very honest answer, and I appreciated that because most players want, most players would probably be offended by a question like that, questioning their like mindset and questioning their commitment or whatever. And I thought it was exactly what changed the series. His aggression, his looking to score and pass and get other teammates involved was huge. And he didn't necessarily shoot the ball amazingly well. I mean, I think he was 9 for 20 in game 5, 11 for 23 in game 6. But the fact that he took those many shots, he was an offensive threat. He wasn't just decoying to Giannis or decoying to Middleton. You know, he forced the defense to have to guard him. And that freed up, guys like Connaughton. It freed up guys like Bobby Portis. Brook Lopez was huge in the back half of the series as well. But I thought Drew Holiday's change in aggression and change in performance in games 5 and 6 were the reason why the Bucks won the series. I want to highlight one more role player from Milwaukee, and that's Brook Lopez. I thought he was absolutely fantastic. Yeah. Game 5, he was unguardable, 33 points on 14 of 18 shooting. And I'm glad because Brook Lopez has kind of changed his game a little bit. He's one of the modern day centers that loves to shoot a lot of threes. I look at guys like Kristaps Porzingis, several others that just shoot and stand at the 3-point line. Marc Gasol has kind of turned his game into that as he's gotten older as well. But Brook Lopez went in the paint in game 5. He knew he had a size advantage down there. He knew he had to punish the Hawks in the paint, and he did that. Game 5, he did it a ton. Game 6, a little bit less so. And, that shows maturity, and that shows a sacrifice to win, right? Maybe he prefers jacking up 6 threes a game. But the fact that he was willing to go inside, he was willing to battle with Capella, the fact that he was able to dominate the paint, I think that shows me a lot about him. That shows me a lot about his commitment to winning. Finally, I want to talk about Nate McMillan. As Ryan's been very high on him. I've been high on him as well. Happy for him that he got his contract extension. He has a good team in Atlanta. That Atlanta team is going to be really solid for years to come. They're very young. I can't think of one veteran other than maybe Lou Williams off the bench. I can't think of one veteran on that team that, might not be in the league in 3 to 5 years. Like, that team is very young and still has a lot of room to get better. So if I'm a Hawks fan, I love what I saw, but I love what I'm going to be seeing in the future. And, I expected the Bucks to win. And now this sets up a fantastic NBA Finals as I leapfrog from the Eastern Conference, unless Ryan has any final word.
Well,
I will go ahead.
I'm sorry. I know you wanted to segue into the NBA Finals. I just had to talk about one last player really quick. And it's something I told Trevor about, off the air, but I needed to talk about Cam Reddish on this podcast because this guy deserves a little respect. And this is the one good thing that comes of, major injuries, Trevor. These other guys, these bench guys who otherwise wouldn't get minutes, have the opportunity to flourish. And Cam Reddish, let's just say he stepped up really big. At least he tried his best. He gave it his all. And he was a lot better than I think everyone thought he was. Trevor, I think you and I especially, and maybe even you more than me, kind of didn't think Cam Reddish was very good, right? I think that he never got a lot of time off the bench. He was hurt for a while. He didn't really play that much. He was okay. He was kind of the forgotten guy from that Duke Zion team. But he is a really good basketball player. He's a guy who I think can be a really, really good scorer and play the 2 guard, or a backup 1 even, in the future for the Hawks. I think that he is a really quality player, and going 7 for 12 in game 6, 6 for 7 from 3. I mean, he kept them in that game, Trevor. They were down by 22 at one point. They battled all the way back. A lot of in part due to Cam Reddish. He stepped up big, and I just wanted to throw his name out there because I think he deserves a little bit of respect, and I think he's going to get more playing time next year, and deservedly so, because he showed out this postseason in these last few games, and he stepped up. So I just wanted to toss his name out there real quick before I move on.
I'm glad you threw him out there. He was huge in game 6. I don't think he'll ever be a 1, but I definitely think he can be a very effective, kind of a sniper on the wing. And that's what we saw a little bit of at Duke. He's always been a good shooter. And he definitely showed in game 6 his potential for years to come. But Ryan, enough with those good old Hawks. I thought Shaq did a very good Hawk impersonation. I didn't do it very well. But anyways, I wanted to talk about the NBA Finals. And this is something I have never gotten to do since I was born, September 25th, 1999.
Wow.
At exactly 2:56 in the morning. I have never gotten to discuss an NBA Finals with anybody that involves my Phoenix Suns. But before I go off on this series, Ryan, I would love to hear what you have to say. And you texted me, you said, Trevor, I have a sign of concern for the Phoenix Suns. And I really am eager to hear what that is. So go ahead.
Trevor, look, I don't want to get off on the wrong foot here. Let me get it out of the way and say I think the Phoenix Suns are going to win the NBA Finals. I don't want to,
Good answer.
I don't want to get it twisted. I think that they will. I think this is going to be a much harder series than a lot of Suns fans think. I think they're a little arrogant right now. I think that that's a problem. I think that their eyes are going to be open a little bit. This Milwaukee Bucks team isn't going to go away, especially if Giannis is healthy. They're a very, very, very deep team, very good team, and Drew Holiday is very nearly, a third star in a big three. I mean, like.
Right.
This is like as close to a big three as we have in this NBA Finals right now.
And they got role players, man.
It's as close to a big three as we had in the championship games this year as well. I mean, they have role players as well, just like we pointed them out in the last segment here. I mean, they have a lot of solid role players. I'm not going to go back through it, but it's true. And so I don't want you to think that, you can just roll them over, but I think the Suns will win the series in 7 games. I think this is going to go the distance. I think it's going to be a hard-fought battle, but I think the Suns are going to pull it out in 7. But getting to my cause for concern, this is why I think the Bucks could easily win this in 7, maybe even 6. I would not be surprised at all. The Phoenix Suns guard play has been very inconsistent, particularly Chris Paul and Devin Booker. And I wanted to shout out Devin Booker. And it's true. If you watch these games, after game 1, Trevor, Devin Booker was not even a top 4 player for the Suns the rest of the series. He wasn't good. He was bad. Let's not get it twisted. He was not a good player. He broke his nose. I get it. It hurts. I get it, man. It's tough. But he was not good. He wasn't good. I mean, I'm going through these games, Trevor. 5 for 16, 5 for 21, 8 for 22, 9 for 22, and 10 for 26. He didn't shoot above 45% a single time after game 1. And I get efficiency might not be Booker's strong suit, but like that's consistently below average play. Like, that's consistently not good play. Like, he was not shooting the ball efficiently. He was taking a lot of bad shots, especially in a few games in the middle of that series. I mean, he's taking a lot of ISO shots. I know Trevor was very frustrated. I know a lot of Suns fans were frustrated with him. And it's a problem because he needs to stop that. He needs to stop taking these ISO shots, bad quality shots, especially when he's shooting poorly. And I'm a little concerned because if he takes this poor play, this poor shooting into the NBA Finals, I don't think it's going to be as easy getting past the Milwaukee Bucks with poor shooting from your best shooter, your best scorer, as it was getting past the Clippers team without Kawhi Leonard. I don't think it's going to be quite that easy. And I think that it's something you need to be concerned about because, he's, again, your best player. I think, Chris Paul has his moments where he's the best player on the court, but I think overall Devin Booker's probably known to be the Phoenix Suns' best player in the grand scheme of things. So that is my concern. And also, while Chris Paul had a fantastic, don't get it twisted, he had an absolutely sensational game 6. He also, he had 3 pretty bad games as well in the middle of that series. And my point is if you have this level of inconsistency from your 2 guards, Chris Paul, again, he shot 8 for 19, 6 for 22, and 5 for 19 in 3 straight games. That's not going to get it done against the Bucks. And so if both of them are struggling and both of them are inconsistent for the entire series, or 70% of the series, 75% of the series, it's going to be very difficult. I don't know if the Suns can overcome that against this Bucks team. So that's kind of my concern, that the guards, your best 2 guards, aren't going to be able to step up and get past their shooting woes. And that's something that I would keep in the back of your head.
Yeah, I partially agree with that point. I do agree with you on the fact that my guards were inconsistent in the last series, right? I thought in the Nuggets series they were fantastic, and in the Lakers series, Chris Paul was hurt. It's hard to really say. And Devin Booker took over that series.
Yeah.
Here's where I'll counter you. 1, the Clippers have excellent on-ball guard and wing defenders, right? I look at guys like Beverly, Terrence Mann, Paul George, Kawhi Leonard when he plays. They can all guard the guard position. They can all guard the wing position. Even Reggie Jackson can guard. They're a very sound defensive team, and they're a tough matchup because they play so small. They switch everything on pick and rolls. And when you're a Phoenix Suns offense that relies so heavily on the ball screen, it's kind of hard when a team's able to switch it, 80% of the time. So that's where I'll piggyback a little bit. I just don't think Milwaukee has that same defensive prowess as the Clippers do, right? You have Drew Holiday. I'll give you that one. I think he's an excellent defender. Middleton's a good defender. I just don't know if Middleton's going to be guarding either of my guards. I could see him guarding Booker. I think that's realistic. But I think Devin Booker's such a good one-on-one player. and I get the ISO ball. It drives me nuts sometimes too because he does take some stupid shots and he does make some bad turnovers. But he's going to find his way. He's a little young. He's 24. Even Monty says it. Monty said it in a post-game press conference. He says some of the stuff Devin does drives me crazy, where he throws up shots looking for the foul. Yeah. He makes some really dumb turnovers at times. But I'm not too concerned about the shooting woes because I think part of it's just attributed to great defense. Part of it's attributed to injury. I think playing with a broken nose and a mask is uncomfortable and new. And, a lot of players have to adjust to that. And number 3 is I think, Devin Booker was just off. I mean, I think he's going to find his shot. He tends to have really good game ones. I looked to the game one he had against the Lakers and the game one against the game one he had against the Clippers. So I expect him to have a 30-point game one where he will shoot the ball at least 50% from the field. Wow. It's hard because you're right. The guard play was inconsistent, but there was always a guard on our team that stepped up. I felt like there was always. Maybe game 3 there wasn't. I'll agree with you about game 3. No one really played well in game 3 for us. But other than that, there was always somebody who, stepped up. And Cameron Payne is that guy. Cameron Payne was huge for us in the first 2 games. He didn't put up huge numbers, but just the fact that he's on the court, when Chris Paul needs a breather, him being the primary ball handler is so helpful for us because, as I said before, Devin doesn't want to be the primary ball handler. Right. Devin doesn't want to be the guy having to be the floor general to lead the offense. He did it in game 1 against the Clippers because he kind of had to, and he was fantastic. But you saw outside of that, he was very uncomfortable. Yep. So I think just having Cameron Payne out there as a primary ball handler, regardless of the stats, opens things up for other guys. Right. So that's an interesting point. The inconsistent guard play. I still like our guards over Milwaukee's. I like Holiday. Wow. I don't really know who their other guards. I guess it would have been DiVincenzo, but he's hurt.
Wait,
who's their starting lineup now? Who will their starting five be?
Middleton's their 2. Middleton's their 2. It goes Holiday is the 1, Middleton's the 2. You have Giannis at the 3, or Giannis or Tucker at the 3, and then the other one at the 4, and then Lopez at the 5.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That's going to be interesting actually because Middleton and Holiday are 2 very big physical guards, and Booker and Chris Paul are kind of smaller. Well, Booker's not small, but Chris Paul's a little bit of a smaller finesse guy. So that's interesting. The backcourt's probably going to be a push, and their front court's probably a little bit better than ours. So I agree with you, Ryan. I think it's going to be a bit of a predicament if our guys don't shoot the ball well. However, I don't think they'll shoot the ball. However, I don't think they will not shoot the ball as poorly as they did, if that makes any sense.
Yep.
I don't know. I think the vibes are high right now. I think playing game 1 at home is going to be huge for my guys. I expect us to win game 1. I'm actually going to bet some money on game 1 after the game. I have a gambling addiction, but I'm going to bet on my Suns to win game 1. I think the interesting thing in this series is, and we haven't gotten into it yet. I know I'm just kind of rambling right now. I think another interesting thing is who is going to guard Giannis. I've been thinking about that a lot because I remember watching the 2 regular season games, and DeAndre Ayton guarded him a lot. They put DeAndre Ayton on him, and Giannis torched us. I think Giannis went for 40 each game we played. And I don't know if they're going to go to Ayton. I don't know if they're going to go to Crowder. I don't know if they're going to double. I would be curious to see if we put Ayton on him in game 1, which I could see Monty doing. Has Ayton matured enough as a defender through these playoffs to be able to slow down Giannis? But then the other worry I have is if you put Ayton on Giannis, who's going to guard Brook Lopez, right? Because Crowder's only about 6'6", 6'7". Lopez is 7 feet. Mikhail has a long wingspan, but he's only 6'6" himself. So it's going to be interesting to see how we approach Giannis. He's torched us in the regular season. I would expect Crowder to come out on him, and if he's in the post, I would expect to see a lot of doubles, forcing Giannis to get the ball out of his hands, forcing guys like Portis, like Connaughton, like Holiday, who have stepped up, these role players to make threes. But I would expect that's how we're going to start the game, assuming he plays, of course. But I think the Giannis matchup is going to be really interesting considering how well he played against us in the regular season. And I'm really curious to see if, Devin Booker can get his shot back a little bit. He's had a week off to get that nose healthy. So those are the 2 things I'm really looking forward to seeing in game 1.
Yeah, I mean, that Giannis thing, Trevor, I mean, that's a predicament. And I can't answer that for the Suns. I can't tell you who they're going to put on him, but I don't think there's really a specific guy that can match up great with them. I think that the best matchup anyone's had with them was Blake Griffin. on the Nets. I think that he
Mhm.
was kind of the body type. He's not too, you know what I mean? He's not too slow.
Right.
He's not too
Right.
tall and too big that he can't,
Right.
go out to like the perimeter and defend him a little bit or the mid range. But, he's big enough. He's strong enough. He's sturdy enough to be able to defend him a little bit in the paint. I don't know if the Suns have that. If you put Ayton on him, Lopez is going to feast. Lopez is he's really good. Like, people forget this guy is really good.
Mhm.
He dropped 33 just 2 games ago. He's really
Right.
good. I mean, so this guy he's a very nice player. People can't forget about that. But Trevor, I wanted to ask you real quick because we haven't really heard it. What's your official prediction for this series? How many games does it go?
Oh.
Yeah, how many games does it go?
It's a good question, Ryan. I'm obviously picking my Suns. I'm fully confident in my Suns winning this series. However, I will, after I give the prediction, I will say something on that. The Suns have a knack for closing series out on the road, so I'm going to go Suns in 6. I would expect us to be. I'm thinking the series is going to be a 2-2 split after 4. I think either team's going to win both at home, or either team's going to win 1-1 on the road and at home. So I expect the series to go 2-2. I would expect my Suns to come out in Game 5 and win. And then I think our ability to close out games on the road has been very unique because we've won every series. We've closed out every series on the road in this postseason, twice in Game 6. Both those happen to be in the Staples Center. Unfortunately, we will not be able to play a closeout game in the Staples Center this series. So I will say Suns in 6. However, I will say one thing, and Ryan touched on it. I'll expand on it. I was at the airport Wednesday night when the Phoenix Suns flew in at about midnight after we closed out the Clippers.
Yeah.
And that looked like a scene you would see after you win the NBA Finals, not the Western Conference Finals, right? I have a lot of videos on my phone. I touched the trophy. I haven't washed that hand since. I'm joking. I have. I got to high five Torrey Craig. I got to high five Jay Crowder, right? I was up close with all these players. They're on top of their cars. They're celebrating. They're filming. It looked like something you would see after you won the NBA Finals, not the Western Conference Finals. So I will make this point. It's great to be happy that you're here, but don't be too happy. Don't let your foot off the gas. It's very easy to get caught up in the moment. And again, I'll go back to the TNT show with Barkley, Shaq, and Kenny the Jet Smith.
Yep.
And Barkley said the NBA Finals just has a different level of attention on it, right? And he said it hits you when you go to media day. There's going to be beat writers from all 30 teams. There's going to be hundreds of writers from every major news outlet, and all the attention's on you, right? And it can be overwhelming, and it can be very distracting. And it's going to be very important for my young Suns team, who virtually have no NBA Finals experience outside of Jay Crowder last season in the bubble, where there wasn't nearly as much of an atmosphere like the one we're seeing this year.
Yep.
My Suns have, and the Bucks also have no NBA Finals experience, but you saw how the Bucks were after their clincher. They didn't look very content with it. They were happy they won, but they were ready to move on.
Yeah.
So my Suns need to be very careful. They can't get too distracted. They can't get too arrogant. And I'm a little arrogant right now just because it feels good to beat, those 3 Western Conference teams we beat. But now is the time to refocus, and now is the time to remember that you still need to win 4 more basketball games, or else Ryan said it, this season's a wash. It's not a wash, but you're not going to be remembered for anything. You're, coming in second place is great, but you're not going to, in 10 years, people are going to, unless you do a Google search, in about 5 or 10 years, nobody's going to remember this unless you're a Suns fan.
Yep.
So time to refocus. Don't get too distracted. Don't get too caught up in the moment. And for the young guys, enjoy this, but be ready to play because Milwaukee is going to come out ready in Game 1.
Yeah, and before I move on from this to our final topic, Trevor, I just want to say that you make a good point about no one will remember you if you get second, like I said earlier. And the thing is here's the thing. I don't like all the celebrating before it's done. It's tough. It's just I get they're excited. I get they're happy. I get they made it through the West. But here's the thing. You won't have this opportunity. This is your best opportunity. Let me put it that way. Let's not kid.
You're not wrong.
Getting to the NBA Finals, right? Past the gauntlet of the West with all these injuries, like it or not, with all these injuries around, you made it all the way to the NBA Finals. The odds are this is your best shot. Chris Paul's 37, soon to be 37. Let's not act like he has time on his side. All right,
Hello? De'Aaron Fox. We got a spot for you in about 2 years, my friend. Go ahead, Ryan.
Yeah, well, look, we say it's easy, but my point is look, you have to realize this is the best shot, and you can't squander it. You can't let it go past you. You can't get caught up in the moment, right? And be too happy with your Western Conference Finals victory to focus up. I don't want to see the Suns come out cold in game one. I don't want to see it sloppy in game one. That'd be a red flag for me. Well, I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think Monty will let that happen. I think he's a good enough coach where that won't happen. I'd be concerned, right? That would concern me if it did happen. Not just because obviously struggling early in the finals isn't a good thing, but because to me that would be the mark of like, all right, did they really focus up after they won the Western Conference? I don't know. So, I don't want to jump the gun too much, but like this is their best shot. So I just hope they don't squander it. I hope they don't mess it up because this is definitely the best opportunity for the Suns to win the NBA Finals in the foreseeable future. So,
100%. I totally agree with you. One more point that Charles Barkley said. He said that his biggest regret as an NBA player in his whole career was not having his Phoenix Suns ready for game one against the Michael Jordan Bulls of the NBA Finals. Because that was also an inexperienced team, that not a lot of those guys had finals experience. And he said his single biggest regret was not being ready for game one. They lost game one at home. They ended up losing that series in 6 games, So that's a very similar situation to what we're probably seeing here. Yeah. And all the celebrating is attributed to the amount of losing that Suns fans have had to go through. And I think winning the Western Conference Finals was a huge deal for a lot of people. But you're right. It's not the end. It's not the final destination. You got to win one more series against a very, very good team. And I'm expecting Giannis to play game one. Even if he doesn't, that team showed up big time in games 5 and 6. So with that being said, Ryan, a fantastic playoff discussion. I don't know if you agree. I thought that was one of our better ones. I thought that was really, very, really fun.
I agree.
It always helps when you have something more to look forward to than the NBA draft, as your Cavaliers have that. But it's time to look forward to something. It's time to look forward to something that maybe can expedite the rebuild process, Ryan. Is there a trade? Do you have a trade prediction for this offseason or just a trade in general that you want to see happen?
Trevor, there are a lot. This is going to be a really fun offseason. And I feel like I say that every year, but I think definitely this year. This is a really good free agent class. This is a really good draft. And there are a lot of players who could be traded. It's a better free agent class than last year, certainly. And probably one of the best free agent classes we've had in the last few years. So I think it's going to be fun. But for me, I have a couple different ideas, but I'll stick with one. It's with a guy who's a free agent, so it will technically be a sign and trade, I suppose. But I think this would be really interesting. And maybe it wouldn't make this team elite, but it would make it a very intriguing team for the year. And it was Kyle Lowry going to the Chicago Bulls. And it's something that I think would be interesting and I don't think is ever thought about. And I thought about it and I'm like, maybe this team could make a little bit of noise with Kyle Lowry. He's on the back end of his career. Let's face it. He's in his mid-30s. I think he's 33, somewhere around there. Maybe actually a little older, but he's definitely in his mid-30s. So Lowry doesn't have a ton of time, but he could do a sign and trade with Chicago and go to a team with Zach LaVine and Nikola Vucevic. Sorry. And as we know, Vucevic and LaVine are 2 pretty much all-star level players. I mean, these guys, if they're not in the all-star game, they're very close to making the all-star team. They're very good players. And I know Trevor was a bigger fan of this Vucevic move for Chicago than I was. I thought it was a little bit of jumping the gun. But if you're going to jump the gun, you might as well go all in. And if you're going all in, you might as well go get Kyle Lowry, a guy with championship experience, a guy who can lead a team on and off the court. And provide stability and leadership. And I think that that's what they need. They have a lot of young players who don't really know how to win. And I think that Lowry can do that. So I think it would be a really interesting sign and trade, I suppose, or just a straight up free agency signing. But I just thought I wanted to point that out because I thought that would be a very interesting move to getting Lowry and just kind of going all in on the next few years with Chicago, see if they can make some noise in the playoffs.
Speaking of going all in, Ryan, and that's an interesting trade. I've never thought of that. I don't think it's going to happen because I don't think Kyle Lowry would want to go to a young team that's still trying to find their way.
Sure.
I think it's more realistic to say that Kyle Lowry goes to a team like the Lakers, but I'm not going to say that that's my free agency / trade prediction. I'm going to go with a very interesting one, and Ryan's going to laugh when I say this, but this
I know what
almost
you're gonna
happened
say.
once before.
I know what you're gonna say.
2 years ago, this almost happened.
Yeah.
It involves my man Kawhi Leonard.
Yeah.
And he goes from the basement Clippers to the Showtime Lakers. It almost happened.
Wow.
If Paul George
Wow.
doesn't commit to going to the Clippers, Kawhi Leonard's a Laker. And now, is Kawhi Leonard happy as a Clipper? You know, we don't really know. I don't really have a good read on this guy. And this is me just kind of like
that's what I was saying
spitballing
earlier.
here.
Yeah.
You know, this is me just kind of like making things up. But what if Kawhi Leonard, you know, he's kind of turned his back on teams. He kind of quit on San Antonio. He abruptly leaves Toronto after they win a title.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the Clippers have a great playoff run without him. Does that upset him? You know, what's going on in the head of Kawhi Leonard? What if he combines forces with LeBron and Anthony Davis in LA? And here's why I think there's about a 0.1% chance of this happening. It's because Ryan's point earlier, Kawhi would no longer be the guy in the limelight. It would be all about LeBron, obviously, because LeBron loves the spotlight. I don't know how much of a spotlight there is right now in Cancun, but that's besides the point.
Okay.
Anthony Davis, you know, he doesn't love the spotlight, but he's a number 2 that's going to get a lot of attention. And then there's the silent killer, the claw, Kawhi Leonard, who can just go out and give you 28 and 10 and excellent on-ball defense night in and night out. The Lakers may not have the money, but they have a ton of free agents. They would probably have to let guys like Harrell, Dennis Schroeder, Alex Caruso probably go. They probably have to let 3 or 4 of their role players go to make room for Kawhi Leonard. So, you know, they would be thinning out their depth a little bit. But let's think about this. You know, the West is going to be always a gauntlet, right? You have Denver, you have my Suns, Utah. There's some other up and coming teams. You know, the Lakers are going to need a squad here in the next 2 years. If they want to try and win a ring in the next 2 years, they're going to need a super team to do it. And let's just say you get out of the West. Then you got to face a super team Brooklyn, most likely, pending they stay healthy. I think, Ryan, you and I would agree if Brooklyn was healthy this playoffs, they would have come out of the East.
They would have won it all. Yes.
You're going to need another third superstar like Kawhi to beat them, right? At least someone close to Kawhi's level. So that's why I wanted to bring this up. I think it's a scary thought, especially as a Suns fan, because if this happens,
it's over.
If this happens, yeah, it's a wrap. My Suns will probably get to the Western Conference Finals. Maybe they win in 7, but the Lakers would probably win that. The Lakers would win the West with Kawhi, LeBron, and AD. So I just thought, you know, since Kawhi almost became a Laker once before, will he commit to LeBron James in marriage and become a Laker this go around?
Trevor,
and it's highly unlikely, but I have no idea what this guy's thinking. Nobody does, and we'll see what he decides this offseason.
Look, before we wrap this up, I want to say if we're on the topic of Kawhi Leonard and where he could go, and we're talking about bold predictions,
I should go to the East.
I think there's a. Please don't. I think there's a more. Yeah, go to Cleveland. I think there's a more likely option. And it's also in the state of California, in the Bay Area.
We've talked about this one. We've talked about this one.
If Kawhi Leonard wants to go to a team where he's not in the limelight, go to the Splash Brothers. Go to Golden State. Go to Draymond Green. Go to the team that won 73 games in 2016.
Why are you saying it like that?
Because, look, if Kawhi Leonard goes to this
team, to Draymond Green.
It would be a sign and trade because they don't have any money. So they'd have to do a sign and trade Wiggins and a couple and Wiseman.
They trade probably Wiggins, Wiseman, and a pick from this year. That's probably what they have to do.
That's a lot. We'll see. But regardless, if that happened, I think that would be the more likely option because they have a few more assets than the Lakers do. Let's just face it. The Lakers have no assets at all. And, you know, I think that it might actually fit even better. Kawhi Leonard, an elite defender, alongside 2 of the top 5 shooters of all time, that team would never lose a playoff game. That team wouldn't lose. And they're going all in right now, Trevor. I mean, they're on the wrong side of 30, particularly Steph and Draymond Green. So, I mean, they're going all in right now. They want to go all in. There's rumors of them wanting to trade Wiseman and a pick because they have 2 firsts for a much better player. And look, I've heard rumors about.
I've heard Siakam is an option.
I've heard Sexton is an option, you know, for them as well. In all seriousness, I'm actually not even kidding. I've actually heard that as an option. But
they want a star. Or they want a decent guard.
Even you said you wanted Sexton when Paul left. Anyway, the point is, I think Golden State would be an interesting spot for Kawhi. You're right. We don't know what's going on in his head. We'll see what happens this offseason. We just want to highlight a few trades we thought, because it's going to be a fun offseason, and it's coming up in just a few weeks. The draft's coming up, Trevor, and I think less than 3 weeks now, or about 3 weeks from now. So it'll be really, really interesting. And yeah, I don't know if you have any final thoughts before we wrap this up, but
two things, Ryan. One of them is back to our man Colin Cowherd, and he said it. The NBA, with the amount of movement we see every year, is a year-to-year league. And it used to be, the Golden State dynasty, the Miami dynasty, the Spurs dynasty, those 5-year dynasties.
I'd say my Cleveland dynasty.
Oh, well, yes, your Cleveland dynasty. I agree. But they only got 1 ring out of it. I'm talking about teams that got multiple rings, right? Anyways, the league now has turned into a who wants to team up with who this year. I'm pretty sure we saw at the trade deadline, 30% of the league was traded at the trade deadline, or it's something absurd. A third of the league is moved around every year, which is just crazy to think about, right? So the league is now a year-to-year thing. That's why I think NBA free agency and the NBA offseason is going to be so much fun. I know you and I are going to cover this very closely, Ryan.
Yep.
But, I know you're very eager for football season, and that will be right around the corner. Give it about a month, Ryan, and we'll be talking a lot about your Cleveland Browns. But my final thing I want to say for this podcast, I'm going to end on a little bit of a fun note.
Yeah.
If you couldn't tell already, I am very sunburnt, right? Very red hot, as you would say. Winning is contagious, and my Phoenix Suns are hot right now, just like I'm sunburnt. I'm hot. My Suns are hot. We're both red hot. We're sunburnt. But the only thing more contagious than the Suns winning is the D-backs losing. I've never seen a team lose as good as the D-backs. 23 and 62 on 23 and 62 on the season. My man Torrey Lavelle thinks they can still win 75 games. What is he smoking? It's not weed. It's something far more powerful than weed. I don't know what it is. Regardless, the D-backs have found a way to, break records in the wrong way. But I am going to enjoy this because I hate baseball. And for any D-backs fans out there, this is what you get for believing in such a sorry franchise with a sorry owner. And I'm going to relish in the fact that the D-backs are red hot, like my sunburn, when it comes to losing.
Wow. I don't have anything to add on top of that, other than I'm excited for the Cleveland Cavaliers to draft the future star Evan Mobley. We're going to be a very good.
You're not getting Mobley. He's going too.
And it's going to be all right. So we'll get Jalen Green, another stud. So, regardless, I'm just going to say it again. I'm excited to be one of the up and coming teams in the East. Making the playoffs next year.
Please trade for Ben Simmons. I would love nothing more than for you guys to get Ben Simmons.
Trevor.
An overrated baby pander to guard with nothing but a hook shot. He doesn't even dunk, right? He passes up open dunks if you saw in the playoffs. And he's a good defender, right? But you have a core.
He can pour in the threes in practice. All right. That's all that matters. If he can replicate that in games. Also, you see, he rocks a shooting sleeve. He wants to shoot. I don't know.
Talk about a wasted. Talk about a shooting sleeve for Ben Simmons. That's ironic if I've ever heard anything.
But Trevor, we'll wrap this up. We'll see what happens, Trevor, come a week from now. It'll be interesting to see if the Phoenix Suns go down 0-2. If they go up 2-0, I don't know. We'll see.
3-0.
Oh, that's a funny joke you got there. But regardless, we'll see you guys next week. We'll be back talking about more NBA Finals, NBA Lottery, NBA Draft, some NFL, MLB news as it comes up. But yeah, this is wrapping up this podcast. We'll be back next week with some more stuff. So see you guys later.
Suns 5.